Hey everyone. Honestly, I never thought I'd be the guy posting his life on the internet looking for advice, but here we are. My name's Jake. I'm 36, been married to my wife, Emily, for 8 years. We met in college, hit it off, and it just felt right. I thought I had it all. Someone to share my life with, the woman I was going to grow old with, a job I didn't hate, 2 dogs that we treated like kids. If you asked me 6 months ago, I would have said I was happy. I didn't know it at the time, but that's when things started to fall apart. Emily, for the most part, has always been a bit feisty, you know? The type of woman who's quick to snap, but even quicker to apologize. She had her quirks, her bad days, and we fought, sometimes a lot. But at the end of the day, we always made up. Or at least I thought we did. It turns out I wasn't seeing what was really happening right in front of me. It started slowly, the change. At first, it was little things that fell off, things I wrote off as stress, or just the normal bumps that come with being together for a long time. But now, looking back, the signs were there from the start. I just didn't want to see them. I've always been the trusting type, and maybe that was my downfall. I thought we had something solid, something that could weather anything, but I was wrong. About 6 months ago, Emily got a promotion at work. It was a big deal, more money, more responsibilities, a bigger office. I was proud of her. She worked hard, and she deserved it. But along with the promotion came longer hours and late nights. At first, I didn't think much of it. She told me she was working on some big projects and that it was just temporary. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? But as the weeks went by, things between us started to shift. She was more distant, more on edge. She'd snap at me over the smallest things. Leaving my shoes by the door, forgetting to pick up milk on my way home from work, stupid shit like that. It wasn't like her to get so upset over nothing. I figured it was just stress from the new job. I gave her space, try not to push too much. Then the work events started. She'd text me around 5 or 6 p.m., saying she had to go out with co-workers after work. I didn't question it at first. Team building events, happy hours, networking. It all seemed legit. I'd done the same thing in my job. But it became more frequent. Once a week turned into twice, then 3 times. Suddenly, it felt like she was spending more time out than at home. I tried talking to her about it once, just casually mentioning how often she was going out, but she got defensive. Said I was being paranoid, that I didn't understand how demanding her new position was. I backed off, didn't want to start a fight over nothing. But the feeling in my gut didn't go away. The real red flag started with her phone. Emily had always been pretty open with her phone, leaving it around the house, asking me to check messages if she was busy. But then she got secretive. She started keeping it with her at all times, even when she went to the bathroom or to bed. Whenever a message popped up, she'd glance at it and then quickly put it away, like she didn't want me to see. I didn't say anything at first, but it gnawed at me. There was a distance between us that hadn't been there before. It wasn't just the phone or the late nights. It was the way she looked at me. Or didn't look at me, I should say. She stopped making eye contact, stopped laughing at my stupid jokes. She was cold, distant. Sex became rare, almost non-existent, and when it did happen, it felt forced, like she was just going through the motions. I felt like I was losing her, but I didn't know why. I kept trying to convince myself that it was all in my head, that she was just stressed from work. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to admit it to myself. Then one night, everything changed. Emily had gone out again. Another one of those work events that seemed to last later and later into the night. She told me not to wait up, that she'd be home late, so I settled in for a quiet night with the dogs, watching some dumb action movie to keep my mind off things. Around 10 p.m., her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I hadn't even realized she'd left it at home. Without thinking, I grabbed it, figuring it was probably one of her co-workers checking in. But when I looked at the screen, my stomach dropped. The message wasn't from a co-worker. It was from a guy named Chris. And it wasn't just a casual message, either. It was a picture of them together at some bar, his arm around her waist, both of them smiling like they were on a date. Beneath the picture was the text, "Can't wait to see you tonight." I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Who the hell was Chris? And why was he sending pictures of him and my wife like that? I felt sick. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the rest of their conversation. It didn't take long for me to figure it out. They'd been seeing each other for months, meeting up after work, texting constantly, sneaking around behind my back. I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I'd loved, the woman I'd trusted, was cheating on me that I don't remember much of what happened after that. Everything felt like a blur. I sat there for hours, just staring at her phone, scrolling through message after message, photo after photo. It was like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. By the time Emily came home, it was well past midnight. She walked in like nothing was wrong, humming to herself as she tossed her purse on the counter. "Hey," she said, not even looking at me. "Sorry I'm late. Work ran over." I couldn't take it anymore. I held up her phone, the messages with Chris still open. "What the fuck is this?" I asked, my voice trembling. She froze, her eyes widening as she saw the screen. For a second, I thought she might try to lie her way out of it. But then her face hardened. "Jake," she said, her voice flat. "Why are you going through my phone?" I couldn't believe it. That was her response? No apology, no explanation, just anger that I'd caught her? "Are you serious right now?" I asked, my voice rising. "You've been cheating on me, Emily. How long has this been going on? Who the hell is Chris?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she crossed her arms and looked at me like I was the one in the wrong. "It's not what you think," she said, her tone defensive. "Chris is just a friend." "A friend?" I couldn't help but laugh, the sound bitter and hollow. "You expect me to believe that after seeing all of this? Do you think I'm stupid?" She sighed, rolling her eyes like I was being dramatic. "Fine," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You want the truth?" "Yes, I've been seeing Chris. It started a few months ago. But it's not what you think. It's not just about sex, Jake. We've connected in a way that you and I haven't in years." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt like I couldn't breathe, that I don't know how long I stood there, staring at her in disbelief. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw something, to kick her out of the house right then and there, but I was too shocked to move. "So that's it?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "You've been sneaking around behind my back because you connected with some guy? What about us, Emily? What about the last 8 years?" She shrugged like it didn't matter. "I'm sorry, Jake, but we haven't been happy for a long time. You know that. Things have been off between us for years." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "And instead of talking to me about it, you decide to fuck someone else?" My voice was shaking with anger now. "You could have told me, Emily. We could have worked on things. But no, you decided to cheat instead." She didn't even flinch. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said, her tone condescending. "It's not like I planned this. It just happened. Chris makes me feel good, okay? He makes me feel alive. Something you haven't done in a long time." That was it. The final straw. I couldn't take it anymore. "Get out," I said, my voice low but firm. She looked at me surprised. "What?" "Get out of the house," I repeated, louder this time. "I don't want to see you right now. Go stay with Chris if he makes you so fucking happy." For a moment, I thought she might argue, but then she just sighed and grabbed her purse. "Fine," she said, heading for the door. "I'll come back tomorrow for my stuff." I watched as she walked out, the door slamming behind her. And just like that, she was gone. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat on the couch, staring at the wall, replaying the conversation over and over in my head. I kept thinking about all the little things I'd missed, all the signs that had been there, but I'd ignored. That first night alone in the house was one of the hardest nights of my life. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the place. Everything was too quiet. Normally, when Emily got home, I'd hear her moving around, kicking off her shoes, complaining about work, or even just the sound of her breathing next to me in bed. Now, there was nothing but an overwhelming, deafening silence. I didn't sleep at all. I couldn't stop my mind from racing. I kept thinking about how she just casually admitted to cheating, how she looked at me like it was my fault, how she didn't even seem sorry. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the way she brushed it off like our whole relationship, our entire marriage, meant nothing to her. How could she just throw away 8 years of our life together for some guy she met at work? It felt like everything I'd known, everything I'd trusted, was a lie. I kept replaying every memory in my head, trying to figure out where it went wrong. Was it something I did? Was I not enough for her? Should I have seen it sooner? Maybe if I had been a better husband, she wouldn't have strayed. But every time I tried to pin it on myself, I came back to one thing. She chose this. She chose to lie to me, to cheat, to betray the trust we had built over the years. By the time the sun came up, I was exhausted but too wired to sleep. The reality of the situation was starting to sink in. My wife had been cheating on me, and now I had to decide what the hell to do next. The next morning, I felt like I was in a fog. My mind was numb, like I was on autopilot. I got up, showered, and tried to go about my day, but everything felt wrong. Everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of her. Her hairbrush on the bathroom counter, her clothes still hanging in the closet, her favorite coffee mug sitting on the kitchen counter. She hadn't come back for her stuff yet, and I didn't know what to do with any of it. Part of me wanted to throw everything she owned out on the lawn and tell her to come get it. But another part of me couldn't bring myself to touch any of it. It was like moving her things would make it real, make it final, and I wasn't ready for that yet. She texted me that afternoon, asking if she could come by after work to get some of her things. I didn't respond right away. I didn't even know what to say. Eventually, I just texted back, "Fine. I won't be here." I didn't want to see her. I wasn't ready to face her again, not after everything that had happened. When I got home that night, the house felt even emptier than before. She'd taken most of her clothes, a few personal things, but she hadn't touched much else. It was like she'd left just enough behind to remind me that she was still a part of my life, even though I didn't want her to be. The next few days were rough. I hadn't told anyone about what had happened yet. I was too embarrassed, too ashamed. I didn't want to be the guy whose wife cheated on him. But eventually I had to talk to someone. I couldn't keep it all bottled up inside. I called my best friend, Mike. He'd known Emily almost as long as I had, and I figured he'd be the one person who might understand what I was going through. When I told him what happened, he didn't say much at first. Just listened, let me vent. But when I finished, he didn't hold back. "Jake, man, I'm sorry you're going through this, but you need to stop blaming yourself. This isn't on you. She made her choices and they weren't the right ones. You didn't do anything wrong." It was the first time anyone had said that to me, and it hit hard. Up until that point, I'd been twisting myself in knots, trying to figure out what I did to push her away. But hearing Mike say it so bluntly made me realize something. I wasn't the one who broke our marriage. She was. Talking to Mike didn't fix everything, but it helped. It helped me see that I wasn't alone in this, that I didn't have to carry the weight of it all on my OWN, that I in the days that followed. Something shifted inside me. The sadness I'd been feeling started to morph into something else. Anger. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was pissed. How could she do this to me? To us? After everything we'd been through together, all the years we'd spent building a life. How could she throw it all away for some guy she barely knew? The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I started to replay every argument we'd ever had, every little thing she'd done to push me away, and it fueled the fire inside me. One night I lost it. I was sitting in the living room, staring at the TV, not really watching anything, when I saw one of those cheesy romance movies come on. You know, the ones where the guy and girl fall in love, and everything works out in the end. I couldn't take it. I grabbed the remote and hurled it across the room, smashing it against the wall. The dogs, who had been lying quietly at my feet, jumped up, startled by the sudden outburst. I felt bad for scaring them, but I couldn't stop the rage that was boiling up inside me. I punched the couch, screamed into a pillow, anything to release the anger that had been building for days. When I finally calmed down, I just sat there, panting, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster. It felt good to let it out, but it didn't change anything. Emily was still gone, and I was still stuck in this nightmare that a few weeks after Emily left, we finally started talking about the logistics of the divorce. It was the last thing I wanted to deal with, but I knew it had to happen. There was no way we were getting back together, and staying in limbo wasn't an option. We met at a coffee shop to go over the details. I didn't want her back in the house, and I wasn't ready to sit across from her in some lawyer's office. I figured neutral territory would make it easier. When I saw her sitting at the table, sipping her latte like nothing was wrong, I felt a wave of anger wash over me. How could she be so calm, so collected, after everything she'd done? But I kept my cool. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing how much she'd hurt me. We talked about the house, the dogs, how we were going to split everything up. It was awkward, uncomfortable, and emotionally draining, but we got through it. She didn't fight me on much. I think part of her just wanted to be done with it, to move on with her life, and honestly, I felt the same. After our meeting, I started packing up her stuff. She'd left behind a lot more than I realized, and going through it was like reopening old wounds. Every item I picked up had a memory attached to it. Her favorite sweater, the one she wore on our first date. The photo album from our wedding. A pair of earrings I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. Each one felt like a punch to the gut, a reminder of everything we'd lost. I thought about throwing it all out, burning it, anything to erase the memories. But I couldn't do it. I wasn't ready to let go completely, even though I knew I had to. I packed everything into boxes and left them by the door for her to pick up. When she came by to get them, I didn't say a word. I just watched as she loaded them into her car and drove away. And just like that, it was over. The weeks that followed were tough. I felt like I was walking around in a daze, going through the motions of life, but not really living it. I'd go to work, come home, eat dinner, and crash on the couch, too tired to do anything but stare at the TV. But slowly, things started to change. I got back into the gym, something I hadn't done in years. I reconnected with old friends, went out for drinks, started doing things that made me feel like me again. It wasn't easy, but day by day, I started to feel more like myself. Just when I thought I was finally moving on, Emily showed up at my door looking like a mess. She was crying, begging for another chance. "I made a mistake," she said, her voice shaky. "I miss you, Jake. I want to come home." Part of me wanted to give in, to let her back in and try to fix things. But the other part, the part that had been betrayed, hurt, and left broken, knew that I couldn't do it. "I'm sorry, Emily," I said, my voice steady. "But you made your choice. It's too late." She broke down in tears, but I didn't waver. I knew, for the first time in months, that I deserved better. Looking back on everything, I realize now that I spent too long trying to fix something that was already broken. I ignored the signs, blamed myself, and let her take advantage of my trust. But in the end, I learned something important. I'm stronger than I thought. If there's one piece of advice I can give to anyone going through something similar, it's this: don't settle for less than you deserve. If someone betrays your trust, walks all over you, or makes you feel like you're not enough, walk away. You deserve better. It's been a tough journey, but I'm finally starting to feel like myself again. And for the first time in a long time, I'm hopeful for the future.